Lucky Boys Podcast.
What do you think about some of the talks with Quentin Tarantino that I had? God. I mean, he mentioned, I mean, with the whole thing with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
yeah,
his portrayal of Bruce Lee getting beaten up on a fight, one-on-one on set, right? And then he recently on Joe Rogan's podcast doubled down. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, you know, it's like I don't want to waste any of my energy and time on Quentin Tarantino because he is obviously just a dirtbag, you know, and he represents white supremacy and structural racism and misogyny, you know, all of that he represents. So I really don't want to waste any time on that. I mean, read Shannon Lee's article. She said it the best, you know. She said he should just shut up, stop talking about my father, because she's tired of white men trying to reframe the importance of Bruce Lee, right? Like, that's a violent attack on our community, what Quentin Tarantino is doing, saying our hero is an arrogant asshole that gets his ass kicked by a white guy. That's a white supremacist narrative. It should just be called that, and Shannon called that. But I do want to point out that Mike Moe, who played Bruce Lee, is a friend of mine, and I love him, and he's extremely talented, and I don't hold anything against him.
I know Shannon in that, I think in that article, a separate, has mentioned not to take out any of your frustrations about that out on him.
Right. He's a great guy. Mike's sweet. You know, talented, extremely talented.
I think I thought he did a great job.
He did a good job.
Representation of Bruce Lee. It's
Exactly.
just that the story or whatever the narrative that, you know, Tarantino was trying to make, you know, really didn't. It wasn't really based on reality. We know that this movie is not based on any reality.
And it's not even that what you're saying is the content, right? You're saying that's the content, that's the story. It's his form is white supremacy, you know, his form of defending himself and creating the narrative. That's white supremacy. It's not the subject matter, it's the form, right? In this particular situation. So people are arguing online, well, Bruce Lee could have been arrogant. You know, it's like, it's not whether he is or wasn't, it's what Quentin Tarantino is doing with his power. That's white supremacist, is what we should be talking about.
So how is he doing that?
Well, with the power that he has, he's casting the minority as less powerful. Number one, right? That's what white supremacy does, is cast other people that's not white as less powerful. And then he's making him look bad, that they deserve it. So when you think about when people say, look at the black community, it's black on black crime, they deserve it, right? Like we don't do that to them, they do it to themselves. The reality is white on white crime is much bigger than black on black crime. But no one names white on white crime, right? So that's white supremacy also, pointing at the black community to saying, look, they're bad, they deserve it. Quentin Tarantino saying Bruce Lee was arrogant, he deserves to get his butt kicked. That's structural white supremacy right there.
What did he say? He was arrogant towards the stuntmen in particular,
and
right?
it doesn't even matter, right?
Where he would actually hit them for real?
Exactly. It's the form. It's what he's doing that's white supremacist. It's not even what he's saying, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's he basically said, like, oh, just because he was, okay, maybe he was this way, Bruce Lee was this way towards the stuntman, that he deserved to be shown this way, right?
Exactly.
That's how I took it. But the thing is, like, you know, we don't know what Bruce was going through during that time in the 1970s. You know, he's the only Chinese or Asian actor on a set full of white people. Were these like stuntmen? Were they, you know, talking shit? We don't know. I mean, like, maybe he had to teach them a lesson.
Right. If I were to tell a story, I would say, you know, when Bruce Lee walked onto the set, all these white guys are like, let's mess with this Chinaman. I'm just going to keep poking him and tapping him. Let's see what he's made of. So they keep doing this to Bruce. Bruce was like, I'm going to poke you back. I'm going to tag you back. And like, they're not giving me any respect, right, at all. So I got to prove myself.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said if you walk into a room being an Asian person,
being a minority,
and you're the alpha male, you will get challenged. I remember even as a kid, if I would go into any forum of a competitive landscape, be it boxing or basketball or anything, if I showed superior talent than someone else, other people will get offended by that and say, let me get a stab at them.
It's a gunslinger mentality from the West. Oh, I heard you can shoot. You know?
I mean, I don't want to speak for Quentin Tarantino with how his approach. I didn't look at it from a white supremacy agenda, so I'm not quite sure about that. Although I do see your point when you say that it does marginalize the importance of an Asian icon. A lot of people in the Asian community feel like, why did one of your own take a role like that? I mean, he read the script, he saw what was there. He was going to get handed to him, and he's representing Bruce Lee. Do you think? I mean, I know you could be very biased here because number one, we're all Bruce Lee fans. Number two, you know Mike personally, but do you think Mike had an opportunity to speak to Quentin Tarantino? You think he would have said, "Hey, should we go at this," without being a problem child, going up to him and trying to work it out where it wouldn't be so controversial?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I talked to Mike. Mike said, when I first saw the script, I went like, okay, the way that it's written isn't going to look good on Bruce Lee.
Oh, so he knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but and he had doubts on whether he should do it. But, I would say that I also took roles that were not great, and I knew that I needed a job, and I needed to get my foot in the door in order to rise, in order to do my job. In order to be here now, to be able to talk about this, I had to take this job, And so I think that, like Mike, I would have said, hey, on set, Quentin, do you think I could play it this way to lighten this? And I'm sure all those conversations had it. I'm sure they shot scenes in different ways. I'm sure some scenes Bruce didn't look the way, like as arrogant as Quentin wanted it, but maybe Quentin finally edited the scene that he wanted, And that's the what all actors are up against, is we try to tell a story from what the writer wrote, right? Because that's the god of a play or a film script. That's what we should be committing to the truth. Now, at some point, there's a lot of interpretations of the truth, and it's up to the editor and director at the very end to hone those things, to tell the story as clear as they want. So Mike could have been given all this, like, Bruce is a much rounder, like solid human being, but at the very end, Quentin probably said, let's go for every take that made him look more arrogant, And that's how things happen,
Right, because Mike's not in the editing room.
Exactly. My best takes on a lot of my films I felt were never used. Like, oh God, I did a much better take than that. When I saw the film, it's like not the take I wanted, but it helps the story, right? And I would say that when I was young and starting out, and I heard a theater interview at Asian American Film Festival with Kelvin Han Yee, Dennis Dunn. I don't know if you know these actors, but Dennis Dunn was in the Big Trouble in Little China, the main character. Mm-hmm. Kelvin Han Yee, is in a lot of TV shows now. And they said, that's just if you want to be an Asian American actor in America, you have to realize you're going to be working in Hollywood, which is a white supremacist storytelling machine. How do you get your voice and our voice as a community heard? And it's like, are you going to take that stereotypical role that they don't know any better? They don't know how to write for us. So you're going to have to teach them while you're on the set. And I've been in those situations where I had to say to the writer and the director, hey, this would go much better if we did this, And without telling them that it's racist right now. And then a lot of times they would go, oh, I think let's do it that way. Because they don't know. And so they're not Asian. They didn't write that line. They didn't write the story. They only know that the story is serving their mentality.
So you think there's some type of unconscious bias? It's not intentional all the time?
Yes, because they're informed by what they saw before. And those writers are all white in the room. Until you get Asian American writers that are informed in the writer's room, then you won't get our authentic stories. You can get Asian American writers kowtowing to Hollywood, and that won't help us. You need Asian American writers who are informed with our history and our authenticity to get into the room, to then have the Asian American actors who are informed go, that's the truth. I know how to act that.